Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line. Talking about the future of Nashville. We certainly followed Nashville Next all along. That process is coming to an end. It was just passed by the Metro Planning Commission. We'll have a report from Jason Lamb on that. That happened earlier this week. We are also talking about transit. That's kind of the next step in all of this. Happy to have Tifinie Capehart here, Nashville Next planner. Thank you for being with us. Hello. Thank you. All right, let's go to the phones. Philip. Hello, Philip.
Hey.
Hi. What's on your mind?
Has there been any kind of a study impact on general traffic, which I believe is heavier due to children being driven to school by their parents, not in their neighborhoods, they're not picked up by buses, they're just being driven? And what kind of impact does that have on the necessity for folks like y'all to try and get transit, because people are sick and tired of sitting in traffic because mom decides she wants to drive her kid to school 20 miles away every morning and go pick him up?
All right, now that's interesting.
Anything about that?
Okay, let's ask about that. I'm interested in the issue of the larger issue of traffic studies, but his specific question, what about that?
I am not familiar with any study that has been done that look at that specific situation. I do know that you can see the difference in traffic when school is out, definitely when you move around, and the fact that here in Davidson County we have the open enrollment program where you don't have necessarily to attend a school where you live, in the area where you live. So people can their travel patterns can be all over the place. I just do want to mention that we last year we implemented a new program with the mayor's office. It's called Stride, where students in high school can ride the buses for free. And this is so far it's proven to be very successful. I think we have about 4,600 rides, and that's per month that we are moving around. And this allows some of the students, they don't necessarily need to depend on their parents moving them around. They also gain some independence in the way that they can access some after-school programs, or simply if they want to go to the movies, and they don't pay for that, so they ride free of cost. So hopefully that's having some impacts in moving some of those trips to public transit. But I do agree that definitely people moving around, taking their kids to school is always an impact in traffic. But there's so many other issues that cause traffic.
There are so many issues. I mean, there is no doubt. It feels like we're seeing a lot more traffic. The traffic has gotten a lot worse. There are a lot more people moving in, so it makes sense. The roads haven't gotten dramatically larger. It makes sense. It's something every mayoral candidate's talking about, a traffic solution. And I don't know what that is right now, but what studies do you have? Do you have studies that say, okay, 5 years ago traffic was at this level, now it's at this level? Do we have any studies that quantify our traffic situation?
Well, the Nashville Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is a regional organization that looks at transportation planning and programming for a 7-county area, they've done some analysis in terms of the movements and travel sheds between counties. And some studies, like Nashville Vital Signs, have identified, there's a lot of congestion happening, and the fact that many people work and live in different counties, that creates a lot of traffic in our area. So one thing is for sure, I've only been in Nashville for about 8 years, but I've seen difference in traffic, and people that have been living in this area even longer can attest to that, and they know how traffic is improving. I'm sorry, getting worse and increasing. So I think I can't really pinpoint a specific study, but I think what we need to start focusing is on what the solutions are going to be, and it cannot be just build more roads and widen roads. I think we need to look at a comprehensive approach. We need to think creatively in how we combine different modes of transportation, and if you're going to do a roadway project, you need to start thinking about provisions for sidewalks, for bicycles, for transit, how we can accommodate more than one mode in one specific project and try to increase capacity in the roadway that way.
And Tifinie, I know when people talked about, when they listed their issues, traffic was one of them.
Yes.
And So how do we deal with that? I mean, it's not a secret. Yeah, traffic's gotten a lot worse. The thing they would say, the other thing I know they would say is we don't want to be Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing that concerns them with Atlanta is the traffic.
Yeah, so what the caller brought up is really just a fundamental land use issue. You know, uses being completely separated to where you have to get into a car to travel to those uses. So, you know, schools are separated from housing, jobs are separated from housing, our retail is separated from where we live, where we work. So everything that we do in our day is centered around a car and how are we going to get to those uses. So it's a fundamental land use issue, and that's how the NashvilleNext plan, you know, addresses that very issue that he brought up, the caller brought up, was, you know, how do you create communities where you don't have to get into a car to go and do the daily things that you need to do? Wouldn't it be great if we had neighborhoods where you had neighborhood schools where you could send your child up the street, you know, to walk to school, and then you didn't have to drive them? And so, you know, similarly with retail and services, and then same thing with commuting, you know, and when you do have to make those long commutes, having choices by the way in which you want to do that, so you don't have to get in a car, but you can take the bus or other forms. So yeah, in terms of studies, I mean, the NashvilleNext plan recommends a land use plan that moves us towards a different land use pattern than we've seen in Nashville, where those uses are more closely clustered together. So, you know, that begins to give people choices. It's not necessarily going to eliminate all traffic issues, but at least when I wake up in the morning, I can make a choice on, do I need to take my car today, or can I just go ahead and take the bus into work?
I grew up in Atlanta, and when I was there, they were always widening the roads. You know, Atlanta was always wide, and I feel like they were building out. I mean, maybe more sprawl was happening there. And so I wonder, you look at Nashville, and that is one of the things you hear over and over, we don't want to become Atlanta. And Atlanta has a lot of great things, but I think what they're talking about is the traffic. Are we at a point now in our evolution, in our development, that we could not become Atlanta? That by doing what you're saying, we could really turn the tide? It doesn't look like this plan is talking about widening the roads indefinitely. And clearly, if we have all this traffic and we don't widen the roads, it's going to be even worse. But do you think with what you're talking about, we really can turn the tide?
I think so, yeah. I think if we, as a city, all the way from our elected officials to the residents, business owners, if we begin to make different decisions about land use, then we can definitely begin to turn the tide. I live in Antioch, so I know the I-24 commute daily. I sit in it every day, in the morning and afternoon. And in my community, you know, there's often great debate about, you know, how do we continue to grow as a suburban place? You know, do we continue to just want single family homes, or do we want houses where, you know, you've got a mixture of uses, a mixture of housing types, and like that? And by making those small decisions and that shift in thinking, it begins to create a different development pattern that over time can have different results. So if we want to continue to see more traffic, then we'll go down one decision path. If we want to see less traffic and more options for transit, then we'll go down another decision path. So I think we are at a pivotal point, and with the adoption of NashvilleNext, that document and that plan is going to help us, you know, if we follow it as much as possible, lead us down a decision path of having more choices in transportation, more choices in housing, and ultimately to begin to minimize some of the issues that we see today.
And we would need more choices. I mean, in what you're talking about, instead of driving into Nashville, it would be ideal, I guess, if your job were right there where you lived.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're talking about setting up new centers. I guess so it's not urban sprawl, but they're complete communities where people can work and shop and do everything there. Is that right?
That's
Get you out of the car for long periods of time. Get you off the interstate, I guess.
That's right. That's right. It's creating complete communities all over Nashville. You know, I think for I've been here for, gosh, over 13 years, having gone to school here and now living and working here. And, you know, downtown has really transformed and has become a 24-hour place, and it's got shopping and living and employment. And I think it's time to kind of create that same type of activity center in other places in the county. And so that's kind of what the future land use plan talks about, is creating those activity centers. Yeah.
And I agree with you completely. I think how many times do you see people that have to get in their car to just drive a mile or a mile and a half away, and many times they don't necessarily want to do that, but they don't have other means to. They're not, you know, the infrastructure is not there, it's not safe. So we need to start thinking in that way. Same, you know, transit needs to be definitely a key part of the conversation, and you don't need, you know, for transit to be successful, you don't need people to ride it every day, every time. But if you have the option that to say, you know, this day I just need to go and stay in the office all day, it works for me. I'm just going to take it today and work and walk to lunch and then ride it back home. Tomorrow, well, I have to do other errands. It's not going to work for me. But if I want to do it, I have the option, and it's there for me.
And it needs to be reliable so that they know that that will. All right, let's go to John. Hello, John. John, are you there?
Yeah.
Hi, what's on your mind?
Well, I have a question about, you know, if you live in Rutherford County, you're basically driving to Nashville to work.
Right.
If you live in Nashville, you're driving to Rutherford County. But these are manufacturing jobs. You never know when you're going to be getting off of work. So, you know, if you miss your bus, it's not the type thing where, okay, I work 9 to 5. It's the type thing where, okay, I go in the morning, but it's I think I don't really know what time I'm going to get off if there's just 1 or 2 buses going up and down, and plus I've got to walk 2 miles to the interstate. I mean, how's that work? I mean, how's that going to function? I mean, people from Nashville going to Rutherford County because of jobs. People from Rutherford County coming to Nashville because they've had these jobs forever.
Right.
The question.
You would like more reliable transportation, public transportation between Rutherford County and Nashville?
Sure. I mean, if they came off, the bus came off at Amville Road and stopped, just like they do in Nashville, it'd be perfect. But, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, you never know when you're going to get off work if you work in manufacturing.
Right. Well, then that just means it has to run all hours. I mean, we see cities where that happens, but all right, so how do we address that issue?
Well, you know, we have some surveys connecting Nashville and Rutherford County. It is mostly oriented for commuters because that's where most of the demand is. And I definitely hear what John is saying, and it's very unpredictable when you work that type of second, third shift. Sometimes you're not sure. It is a challenge for transit, and I think one of Nashville right now is a medium-sized city. We're getting to be a real big city, and we need to start thinking about how we service those needs. One of the things that we hope to accomplish with NMotion, with our strategic plan process, is to try to identify those needs like John's, and what are some of the challenges, why people cannot ride transit, what makes it difficult for them to consider transit an option, and we hope to learn from those needs and try to see what opportunities are there. It is hard. Some big cities have transit 24 hours. We're not quite there yet, and it may take some time.
Well, yeah, it may take some. How long before we might begin to see some of that? Because I think, as you said at the top of the show, there are people that are moving here from other cities that are used to much more robust public transportation, and it would be great. But I feel like we're a long way from that. But
right.
Am I wrong? I mean, how far down the future are we talking about here?
I mean, when you see the forecast for the population by 2040, we're definitely probably going to be hitting some of that before then. But I think we need to start with some improvements over time. Right now, a lot of the comments that we hear is that we don't operate long enough, and with all the level of activity that you get, especially around downtown and with the honky tonks and nightlife, there are some areas that probably can start seeing some of that. it doesn't necessarily translate to, you know, the whole region. But over time, you know, you start implementing some of those changes. It's going to take time, but I think those are the type of comments that we need to start listening, understanding, so we can address them better through the emotion process.
We're going to take a break. If you want to call, number right there, 615-737+, 615-737-7587. We're talking about mass transit. We're also talking about the future of Nashville with Nashville Next. And we will show a story about a report from earlier this week about the passage of Nashville Next. Show that after the break. We'll be back right after this.